kidding. Chris, thank you as well for being here. The Club for Growth is one of the finest organizations involved in American politics. They go out and they find people that are committed to free enterprise and limited government. And in particular, they do a good job of finding the people that say they are, but really aren't in their actions. I can just tell you there were a lot of people that were instrumental. Many of you are here today that were instrumental. 3% in the polls. 3% in the polls. At the very beginning of that race, the only people that thought I could win, they all lived in my house. And 4 of them were under the age of 10. So when the Club for Growth came on board, they didn't just endorse me. They helped raise money for me from their members all across the country. Chris was instrumental in that. There was no way I would be in the U.S. Senate were it not for their help. I'm always grateful, and I'm honored to have his support now, not just because of his stance on the issues, but because he's a Florida resident, which means he can vote for me, too. So we're grateful to him for that. And I want to thank all of you for being here. And, every time that an election rolls around, the media becomes obsessed with polls. But oftentimes, I think they obsess about the wrong ones. Today, I want to talk to you about a poll the media is ignoring. But I wish they had been talking about the entire campaign. There's this recent poll, and it asked, this is the question that it asked, is the American dream dead or alive? Almost half of the millennials, meaning younger Americans, their answer was that the American dream was dead. Other polls have shown even higher numbers across every generation. So this is a warning sign for America, a sign that what's at stake in this election is our identity as a special nation. That identity has long been tied to the belief that here, anything is possible. That here, that you don't have to come from wealth and you don't have to come from privilege to provide a comfortable life for your family. That here in America, anyone who works hard can leave their children better off than themselves. This is the real American dream. But today, it is dying. It's not dying because our people have changed. They haven't. It's dying because both parties in Washington, quite frankly, both parties, have let us down. It's dying because our current president, Barack Obama, has abandoned the economic principles that made us the most prosperous nation in the world. It's dying because Congress is into an unprecedented debt. And it's dying because while our economy is pushing the boundaries of the 21st century, way too many of our leaders are still stuck in the 20th century. They fail to grasp the way that technology and global have transformed our economy. They raise taxes and they grow government, even though it's costing jobs and it's making America globally uncompetitive. They shrug off the rising importance of trade and foreign policy on our household budgets. They seem bewildered when market turmoil in Beijing ends up triggering market turmoil in New York. To confront these new realities, what we need are new leaders. Leaders who will apply the free market principles of our founding to the economic realities of our time. Who will once again place Washington's faith in our economy rather than forcing our economy to place its faith on Washington. The purpose of my presidency will be, when it comes to economics, the purpose of my presidency will be to restore the American dream. And I'm going to start by re-embracing the free enterprise, free enterprise, because it is the greatest economic system in history. It's the only system where poor people can become richer without making rich people poorer. The only system where everybody can be better off. Here's what Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton don't understand about free enterprise. In the free enterprise system, the president does not run the economy. Ensure policies are in place that allow the private sector to succeed, because it is the private sector that creates jobs and opportunity. Today, we don't have those policies in place. Under Barack Obama, Washington borrows an average of more than $1 trillion a year. The private sector to spend almost $2 trillion a year just to comply with federal regulations. It imposes the highest corporate tax rate in the developed world. It thinks its job is to make your health care decisions, to bail out big businesses, and even to try to control the weather. As our president, I will put Washington in its place. It will once again stand behind our people, not in their way. When I am care before it repeals and replaces any more jobs, care, before it repeals and replaces any more jobs. When I am President of the United States, I will shred every single one of Barack Obama's job-killing executive orders. When I am President, I will cap the amount regulations can cost our economy, and I will end Washington's addiction to wasteful spending. Because by the time our next president takes office, America, our country, will already be $20 trillion in debt. It's difficult to even fathom how much that is. So think about it this way. If you were to count $20 trillion by hand, even a century to finish counting, you know how much it would take you to count to a trillion, to count to that 20 trillion in a century to finish counting? You know how much it would take you to count to a trillion, to count to that 20 trillion with your hands? It would take over 600,000 years. That's how much money we will owe when Barack Obama leaves the White House. The debt will have almost doubled since he took office. Much of that money we owe to China. And make no mistake, if we change nothing, we are going to have a debt crisis in this country. Destroy jobs. It is going to disrupt the function of government. And it is going to threaten our national security. This is the most predictable crisis in American history. But every time the alarm starts blaring, signaling that we've reached the debt ceiling, Washington hits the snooze button and goes back to sleep. Under our last 3 presidents, 20 times without a single serious spending reform. I will stop this irresponsible spending, and I will, as your president, solve this nation's debt crisis once and for all. The political courage to reform the main drivers of our debt, which is the way Social Security and Medicare are structured. Political courage to reform the main drivers of our debt, which is the way Social Security and Medicare are structured for future generations, like mine and my children. If we do nothing to save these important programs, they will bankrupt themselves, and then they will bankrupt our country. I will save them for future generations by placing them on a fiscally sustainable path. But that alone is not going to avert a debt crisis, because history backs up the following fact. If you do not have laws in place to keep politicians from spending money they don't have charge, and since Congress refuses to pass a law restricting itself from spending money it doesn't have, we truly are left with only one option. We must do what the founders of this great nation gave us the power to do. We must call a convention of states to amend the U.S. Constitution. It will be limited. They won't be able to touch the Second Amendment. They won't be able to touch our important constitutional rights. But here's what we need them to do. We must pass amendments limiting the size and scope of the federal government. Amendments that force Congress to pass a balanced budget by passing a balanced budget amendment. And my favorite, amendments to oppose term limits on Congress and the courts. I like the balanced budget amendment too, but term limits are my favorite. As president, I will be able to promote such a convention, but I cannot make it happen. The American people have to make it happen. And that's why I'm asking for your help today. To any American worried about the debt we're leaving our children, join this effort. Join me in this effort. Press your state representatives and state senators to convene a convention of states so we can pass a balanced budget amendment and we can pass term limits in this country once and for all. The third step we have to take to solve our debt crisis is growing the American economy. That will happen by making America the best place in the world to own and to operate a business. If you want to know how to do this, talk to job creators. Talk to the people who are doing it. I don't know a single job creator in America who is asking for more taxes or more regulations. Yet that's exactly what some candidates for president are proposing. If you listen to Hillary Clinton, every answer to every problem she has is to raise taxes and create a new government program. And it's not just her. Socialist running against her. Believe it or not, multiple Republican candidates for president support new taxes on the American people. Some even support a new tax that generations of conservatives have fought against. It's called the value-added tax, also known as a VAT. The VAT is being proposed in this election. Here's how it works. It works by taxing businesses at each stage of the production process. It falls squarely on profits and on wages. What it means is companies will have to pay taxes on the money they make, but they will also have to pay taxes on the money they pay their employees. And that means it punishes businesses for earning money, and it punishes your employer for giving you a raise. The VAT is also intentionally sneaky. It attempts to trick people into believing their taxes are being lowered when in fact, and in reality, they are simply being shifted to employers. Meaning everyday Americans would feel its impact through higher prices and lower wages. If you start making businesses pay a new tax on the money they pay their employees, they will have to pass that through lower pay and higher prices on their customers. And this is going to be especially harmful to the poor and to senior citizens living on a fixed income. Because while they're not earning income they're paying taxes on, they're spending money. And everything will cost more. Because we've now shifted the tax burden, double the tax burden, to the employer. The VAT makes for a dangerous expansion of Washington's power, especially when you realize it is being added on in addition to the continued existence of the income tax. In most European countries where a VAT has been implemented, government has grown in its size. It is no wonder that include Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama, who called it a novel idea. And opponents include Ronald Reagan, who said that the value-added tax, and this is a quote from Ronald Reagan, gives a government a chance to blindfold the people and grow in stature. And he was right. No candidate who supports this tax can claim to be in favor of abolishing the IRS. Reagan's Treasury Department estimated that they would need 20,000 new agents to administer added tax. Republican candidates today try to hide their support for the value-added tax by renaming it a business flat tax. But don't be fooled. It's like a VAT, and it taxes like a VAT, and it grows government like a VAT. It's a VAT. This isn't the only anti-free market idea being offered up by Republicans in this race. There are other Republicans running for president who support an internet sales tax that could subject businesses to being audited by almost 10,000 separate jurisdictions around the country who impose sales taxes. The internet is the marketplace of the 21st century, and it is unacceptable that anyone who claims to be a conservative would join this liberal cause for an internet tax. Let me be clear. I do not support new taxes of any kind, because what our country needs is economic growth, and there is no new tax that leads to economic growth. So what I have offered instead is a plan that reduces taxes on both individuals and on businesses. My plan is pro-growth and pro-family. It will lower the corporate tax rate to be globally competitive. It will level the playing field between big business and small ones. And it will make it easier for your employer, for your boss, to give you a raise. It will also allow families, working families, to keep more of their own money, of the money they earn. Today it is more expensive than ever to raise a child. And our tax system is making it even costlier. With 4 children of our own, Jeanette and I know firsthand and live this every day in our home. As president, that's why I want so they can keep more of their own money to spend on things like food and clothing and school supplies and all the other so they can keep more of their own money to spend on things like food and clothing and school supplies and all the other daily costs associated with raising children. Century. A marriage penalty that leads couples being taxed more than individuals. To improve a child's future more than being raised in a loving 2-parent home. And it is time our tax code recognizes it. Taxed more than individuals. Nothing has the ability to improve. Our tax code recognizes it. Tax code recognizes it. Through tax reforms, I'm also going to strengthen family leave policy, so fewer parents providing financially for their children or being there for them in a time of crisis. So fewer families and people have to choose between suffering financially because they have some time off of work to care for an ailing parent. But instead of raising taxes, as Hillary Clinton and others proposed last week, I'm going to solve it by cutting taxes for all businesses that offer between 4 and 12 weeks of paid leave, to make it more affordable without more government. From the individual to the business side, my free market easier. It will lead to a tax code that will make it easier for Americans to find jobs and easier for our businesses to create them. Millions of better paying jobs. As president, I will recognize millions of better paying jobs. As president, I will recognize that what makes America great is not that we have rich people. We are grateful for financial success in this country. We should celebrate it, and I do. But every country has rich people. What makes America great is that here we have millions of people who are not necessarily rich, unless they win Powerball. Necessarily rich, but they have a job that pays a comfortable wage. Helps them and enables them to do the activities that they love with the people that they love. It allows them to retire with dignity, and that ultimately allows them to leave their children with even a better life than their own. That has been made possible in America because of the choices generations before us made. Almost every other country in the world has chosen to have the government dominate their economy. And so in those countries, those who can influence government, they keep winning. And everybody else stays the same. The employee in those countries never becomes the employer. The small business can never compete with the big business. And no matter how hard your parents work or how many sacrifices they make, if you weren't born into the right family in those countries, there was only so that came before us chose something very different. They chose individual liberty. They chose a limited government that exists to protect our rights, not to grant them. They chose a free enterprise system designed to provide equality of opportunity, not to force or to compel equality of results. And yet, despite the extraordinary story and success of America, there are still these people in our politics that cling to the belief that America is better off adopting the economic policies of nations who people leave to come here from. There have always been these voices in American politics. But unfortunately, 7 years ago, one of them was elected president. And since his election, he has sent the message to our people that becoming better off means someone else has to be worse off. That the only way to climb up the economic ladder is to give him or government the power to pull someone else down. That government is the best hope for those in search of a better life. But these big government ideas did what they have always done. They have failed. Our people hear him talk about how the economy is doing so great, but they sure don't feel it in their lives. And as a result, we are now at risk of seeing an entire generation of Americans, an entire generation, lose hope in the fundamental promise of our country. The promise that hard work and perseverance can and will lead to a better life. 7 years after Barack Obama have left us, sadly, a great nation in decline. But we can still pull ourselves out of this dive. Because, my friends, we are not a weak country. And we are not a weak people. We just have a weak president. Thank you. This is no time for patience. The time to act on this is now. If we get this election wrong, there may be no turning back for America. That's why we can't afford to elect Hillary Clinton, because America cannot afford another 4 years like the last 7 years. This is also why we can't just elect any Republican. Because at its core, this election is not just a choice between two political parties. At its core, this election is a generational choice, a referendum on our identity as a nation and our identity as a people. We did not become this great country by accident. For over 2 centuries in our history, each generation before us, they did what they needed to do. They confronted their challenges. And because they did, they made it the greatest nation on earth. Now the time has come for this generation to do its part. Now the time has come for us to do our part. If you elect me president, the United States of America will return and re-embrace the principles that made America great. We will put the false promise of big government behind us, and we will once again re-embrace the power of a free people and a free country to create a more prosperous nation. And if we do this, we won't just save the American dream. We are going to expand it to reach more people and change more lives than ever before. We won't just have new jobs. We'll have jobs that pay more. We won't just have new businesses. We'll have new businesses that grow faster and create more opportunity both for the people that are there. If we do what needs to be done in this generation, then this 21st century will not just be as good as the 20th century. It will be better. And history will say that this generation was the author of the greatest chapter in the amazing story of America, what will forever be known as a new American century. So thank you for hearing me out.